I believe that they were investigating hyperdimensional physics, and that their reasons or motivations for doing so were depending on three things: a theoretical component that was in the physics literature in Germany between the wars, an engineering component. I mean, you can have all the fancy theory that you want, but it may not be engineerable. So is this stuff engineerable? Can you make something practical with it? And then finally, interestingly enough, the esoteric component, or if you will, the occult. Now, the theoretical and purely scientific component comes from this fellow. His name is Dr. Theodor Franz Eduard Kaluza. Some of you may have heard Michio Kaku on Coast to Coast, and every now and then he'll be talking about the run-up to string theory, and he'll mention this fellow, Kaluza, or Kaluza Klein. This is the fellow that formulates the first post-relativity unified field theory, unifying gravity and electromagnetism. And he does so in a theory that involves 5 dimensions: 1 of time, 4 of space. And that extra 4th spatial dimension is kind of a very tiny, curled up dimension that makes his geometry, the geometry of his theory, a cylinder. There's your stacked cylinders in the bell, okay? That's the theory. And incidentally, he's not Jewish. Very important. This man stays in Nazi Germany during the war, okay? The really important component is this man, the engineering component. This fellow is probably unknown to most of you. His name is Gabriel Krohn. He is Jewish. He was a Hungarian Jew. He was a genius. He came to this country sometime during the 1930s. But in 1935, Gabriel Krohn, he's an electrical engineer, publishes a paper that wins him a prize, the Montefiore Prize, at the University of Liège in Belgium. And in the paper, what he is arguing is that all of these unified field theories that begin to come out in Germany, beginning with Theodor Kaluza, up to and including the early theories of Albert Einstein, what he says is that these theories are the hyperdimensional theories that can explain electrical anomalies that we electrical engineers observe in large, networked, rotating electrical systems. Now, please understand that what he has just told you is that these theories are engineerable practically on the laboratory bench. And remember what Einstein's theory was, which is a component, relativity theory is a component of these unified field theories. When you say that these theories are practically engineerable on the laboratory bench with 1935 technology, you are saying that space-time itself is locally engineerable. And over the border in Nazi Germany, at that moment, publication of unified field theories inside the Third Reich stops. And the principal component of what he is observing as an engineer and saying, I can explain this with these hyperdimensional theories, is torsion. What's torsion? Well, for the mathematical out there, torsion, as you know, Einstein-Cartan torsion tensor, very small effect, usually negligible, you don't pay attention to it. There's another version called Ricci, dynamic torsion, but let's not argue mathematics. Let's get down to brass tacks. What is the concept? Think of yourself as holding an empty soda can, and you wring it like a dish rag. There's your counter-rotating metal drums, folks, in the bell. Opposite ringing motion. The can represents space-time. As you ring it, you fold and pleat the fabric of the can, and the ends of the can draw nearer to each other. That's torsion. That's those two counter-rotating drums, all that high-spin fuel in the bell. Now, what's the significance of what Krohn said? Well, I've just told you, but historically, this is the period that you see unified field theory publications disappear inside the Third Reich. Krohn himself ends up in the United States working for General Electric. I think you all know of a famous experiment on a ship involving electricity and rotating fields. This is the third element in Nazi thinking. If you can believe or imagine Heinrich Himmler having a Rasputin, this is the man. And actually, that's his nickname, Himmler's Rasputin. This is Karl Maria Willigut, also known as Weistor, also known as Jarl Vidar. He's a one-star SS general. He is on Himmler's personal staff. And the man is Himmler's personal occult expert. This guy was a well-known European esotericist. Published many things, many articles about astrology, about ancient texts, about ancient, space races, and so on and so forth. But here is his basic cosmology. What do we have? We have two counter-rotating spirals. Now, what does he say about this? Listen carefully. If you take nothing away from my presentation or my books, take this away, please. Behind many metaphysical texts, if you know the requisite physics, most of those texts can be decoded in terms of modern physics. And I would include many ancient Neoplatonic and Hermetic texts in that category. Willigut says this about those counter-rotating spirals, and I'll read it. You can follow along here on the left-hand side. Primal law. As above, above as below, below as above. Therefore, in the middle, there is a neutral force, idem est, generational field, from the two spirals. Each triply wound and connected by the generational plane, the middle field is developed to the world egg, unquote. Sounds kind of like an alchemist on LSD, okay? But look what it means. Decode it. The fabric of space-time, remember Krohn as you listen to this, the fabric of space-time is not a mere void. Space-time is itself an information-creating field that creates precisely by creating systems of rotation within systems of rotation within systems of rotation. Many of you have probably heard Richard Hoagland. He'll tell you, what are the three laws of hyperdimensional physics? Rotation, rotation, rotation. What do we have in the bell? Counter-rotating drums, high-spin nuclear isomers, spinning electricity, pulsed direct current electricity. And the symbol of all of this rotational physics has been staring us in the face since 1933, if not before. The corporate logo of the Nazi Party. And for those of you with a mathematical or physics background, now think of this as a vector diagram. Because what do you have? A subsystem of vectors, the outer arms of the swastika, a system of rotation. And the inner arms of the swastika representing a system of stress, rotation and stress, in the medium itself, ringing the can with counter rotation. So in other words, in a certain sense, given the fact that all of these top secret SS departments were set up almost at the inception of the Nazi regime, you have a nation state that was dedicated to the principle of exploring the modern scientific applications of ancient lore and making it practically engineerable. That's why you have all the explosion of this technology that you do, because they were thinking utterly outside the conventional box. So the purpose of the Bell Project then was, in my opinion, to explore the theory and technology of creation itself. In other words, of the godlike ability to manipulate or engineer the fabric of space-time itself by tapping into the dynamic characteristics of space-time, its rotational characteristics. Now please note the implication. Such a technology, if successful, would obviously lead, number one, to so-called free energy and a complete and utter end to a dependence on petrodollars, limited non-renewable energy resources, and, for the Nazis, Anglo-American corporate financial predators. In other words, the very people that put the Nazis into power, the Nazis are no longer playing the New World Order game, ball game, from the get-go. Number two, obviously, given the testimony of people involved with the Bell Project in the camps that see this thing levitating, it leads to an anti-gravity field propulsion physics. But here's the real thing. This is what the Nazis are really after. Because its classification, again, is the only project in Nazi Germany to have the classification of Kriegsentscheidend, war decisive. Because if you weaponize this stuff, you have a potentially planet-busting technology that would make a hydrogen bomb look like a firecracker. And this is the technology that Martin Bormann kept to himself, yeah? While he's giving away atomic bombs and rockets. I told you it was bad news. So what the Bell was, is it's a prototype experimental technology. And please understand, a prototype experimental technology to test the aspects of a torsion-based, hyperdimensional unified field theory designed deliberately to lead them to free energy technologies, to field propulsion technologies, and ultimately to the ultimate planet-busting energy weapon, whose destructive potential we can only imagine. What the Bell wasn't, it is not a mere isotope centrifuge for enrichment. I've heard that one. But sit down and do the physics, people. It is not a mere plasma trap, although through its use of that serum 525 and rotating it and electrically stressing and pulsing it, yeah, plasma is definitely involved. It is not a Nazi UFO because there aren't people flying this thing that are inside it. I wouldn't want to be. It was not a time machine used by the Nazis to time travel. Although, as we shall see and have seen with the plants decaying, there are time dilation effects involved. What are we doing? We're wringing that soda can. It is not a stargate or dimensional portal, though again, the physics implied in it does imply some very extreme shear effects in the actual structure of space-time itself. So, might that possibly result? Yeah. Did the Nazis actually use it for that purpose? Probably not, because we're dealing with a prototype technology. Were they successful? Did they achieve their goal? Again, to a certain extent, yes. We've seen the effects on plants. We've seen the effects on humans. We've seen the observed levitation. And all those effects are commensurate and condign exactly to the type of physics I've been describing to you, this extreme shearing effect in the physical medium. And incidentally, the final clincher is that one of the Bell's project code names was Project Chronos, Project Time. So let's sum up the physics. The dimensions, I don't think, at this juncture and stage of my research, I don't think served any practical functional purpose. The cryogenic cooling, yes, superconductivity, once again, high spin, high speed rotation. The counter-rotating of drums, again, torsion shear, high speed rotation. Serum 525. Plasma, yes, torsion. What's the sun? It's a ball of plasma that's rotating. And incidentally, the layers of the sun don't all rotate at the same speed. Physicists call it differential rotation. So the sun gives itself off torsion effects. And that means, and I wrote a recent book that just came out about this, that means that the standard thermonuclear model of fusion in the sun is not all that's going on in it. There's something else dealing with the nature of time and rotation itself. Probable use of thorium in this substance. Why do I say thorium? Briefly. When the Allies went into Nazi Germany and sent their intelligence agents scattered throughout the Third Reich, one of the big mysteries we could not explain, it made no sense to us, that's how inside the box we were, that here's the Nazis, you know, we've got the A-bomb, but these Nazis, these stupid idiots, are stockpiling massive amounts of thorium. And what are they using it for? We've never been able to figure it out, except thorium-229 isomer, to get enough of it to be of any use to you, number one, you have to have a very sophisticated technology to separate it. Laser enrichment. Number two, since it only exists in a few parts per million, you have to have a lot of thorium to isolate enough of this isomer to be of any use to you. Why the alternating and direct current potentials? Well, you spin up that serum in these counter-rotating drums mechanically and electrically. This is both quite important. And you use the drums themselves as one polarity in an electrical circuit, the center of the bell as the negative polarity, and then you pulse that plasma with an extremely high voltage direct current pulse. You've got all the atoms spinning in the same plane. You've got an isomer. You pulse it with high voltage electricity, de-excite that isomer, and as a result you create a kind of a little space-time bubble around this device. There's your levitation. And as that happens, all that isomer spits out those gamma ray bursts that are so deadly to things in its field. So that's kind of the way I rationalize this device on the basis of the physics. Again, what's the purpose of all this? Well, look at what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a unified field theory. So we have a unified physics implying, therefore, a unified technology which is capable of being used in 3 different applications: free energy, field propulsion, and the ultimate weapon.